Temporarily, your video is on YouTube again.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to report that we met in camera and direction was given to staff. And the following motions are coming. Okay, anybody ready to move the motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Tangley, well, second by Councillor Green. Any question on the motion? Councillor Rhino. Councillor Rhino, you're on.
Just a question. Do the people in looking at this through the internet, do they get to see the motion as read? Because if they don't, I do believe the motion should be read.
Touch base with you on that further.
It should be in the library. Or they can get it at a bookstore. Anybody that's
Okay.
interested. It was Indigo's star pick of the month. Not sure what month, but
Well, just where he's local and also you've been in the school, it would be great.
yeah.
Okay, folks, you should be able to see the agenda. The break screen should be gone. We are live streaming. We're going to resume the recording, so you can start the meeting at any time you like, Wayne.
Shirley, can you please start my video? I cannot start it. It said you have to start it.
Okay. There, you should be able to now. Is there anybody else?
Can't see Keith.
Keith's there. We can see Keith.
And Tom. Okay, folks, we'll bring this portion, your PAC portion to order, call the meeting to order. First, I'll be looking for approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Warden Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Hibb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. First up, we have the Portree JACC rezoning and redesignation of Mount Uniac. First reading, John.
Like you can see my screen there now, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an application to go from rural use to R2, a 2-dwelling unit residential, or it was an application to go to R2. The applicant has since changed the request to go to R1, and that's actually why we're going back to first reading. We've previously given, or council had previously given it first reading. And a public information meeting was held back in April. This is the property outlined in orange here. So it borders the HRM boundary here on the white side, the Sackville River along here, South Uniac Road, and the surrounding zoning is mostly rural use, RU. There is a municipal property here, open space on the Sackville River there. And the property on the HRM side is zoned what they call mixed resource MR1, which is fairly similar to our RU zone. So the proposal is to change the designation and zoning to allow a 50-lot subdivision. And there is a concept here. It should be noted that this is only a concept. It hasn't been reviewed under a subdivision bylaw yet. That would obviously happen after any rezoning. And again, it shows 50 lots. There is a large wetland in this area, and there has also been no open space taken out of this. So it may not look exactly like this by the time they get through the subdivision application process, but it is a good idea of what a future subdivision there might look like. In terms of policy, so the Mount Uniacke Growth Management Area is fairly unique in that it allows this type of development, unserviced development, whereas the other growth management areas obviously rely on services, municipal services. The zone it's in, this property is in, though, does not allow new roads, a rural use zone, so that's the need for the redesignation and rezoning. And because this is an MPS amendment involved in this application, council's decision is not appealable to the URB. What we've learned so far from reviewing agencies and our review, firstly, the RCMP really have no concerns. They did comment on the proposed road extensions to the HRM boundary. Their concern there would be if those roads get extended in the future, there could be an issue with jurisdiction about how you get to that part of HRM. Although HRM commented that they don't have any concerns, but they also commented on those roads terminating at the HRM boundary. And they noted that in their own regulations, they don't foresee any future roads in that area. So that might negate the concern from the RCMP. Nova Scotia Public Works are not requiring a traffic impact study for this application, and all their other comments related to the intersection location and drainage, which are issues that really get addressed at the subdivision stage. Similarly, East Hants Infrastructure and Operations commented on the road layout, and that's really, an issue for the subdivision stage. The Sackville Rivers Association commented that the property abuts the Sackville River. They're simply reminding us that any development has potential to do harm to a waterway. They also point out the large wetland complex on the property. They're also hopeful that the Watercourse Greenbelt zone remains undeveloped, and they're also hopeful that it actually comes into public ownership as a result of the application to allow what they envision as a future river conservation corridor trail that would go from HRM into East Hants. So the Watercourse Greenbelt portion of this property is not proposed to be rezoned as part of this application. It would stay Watercourse Greenbelt. And how much of that land comes into public ownership, that's really, I guess, through the subdivision process, East Hants Parks, Rec and Culture commented that they may be interested in acquiring some of that land if there's a trail network that it could connect to from HRM. So that would be, again, something that would happen at the subdivision stage. In terms of hydrogeology, the applicant engaged Earthwater Concepts Inc., Richard Gagne, to conduct a level 1 groundwater assessment for the proposed development. And the report actually recommends that they go on and do a level 2 assessment, but he also said that he didn't expect any issues with quantity or quality of water on this site. In fact, he suggested that even using very conservative estimate, there's a potential for 500 additional dwellings within the groundwater recharge area that this development is in. And, this is proposing 50 dwellings. So, quite a bit less than even that conservative estimate. The consultant's main concern is really with well interference within the new subdivision if wells are put too close together, but that's really a concern anywhere. I don't think it's specific to this site. And because of that recommendation for a level 2, I did call the consultant, had a conversation with him. But after that conversation, I'm pretty satisfied that he's comfortable that there's enough water, or highly probable that there's enough water in this recharge area for these 50 dwelling units. The only reason he recommended that level 2 is because of where glacial till is on the property. There's a lot of soil, more soil in the southern portion, so it's more difficult for him to get a read on the geology. It's the only reason that he recommended the level 2. So in terms of citizen engagement, we do the normal advertising. And again, I mentioned a public information meeting was already held. Issues that came up there were the condition of the South Uniacke Road and Bridge, impact on development on property taxes, the environmental impact on the Sackville River wetlands and wells, all addressed. And a survey was also circulated to about 50 property owners within 500-meter setback. Council directed us to go 500 meters instead of 300 meters, so we did that. And we only got 3 responses though, and they also talked about things like traffic and safety on the South Uniacke and Etta roads. One of the respondents objected to the R2 zoning, talking about that could potentially double density. Well, if we're going to R1, that's obviously no longer an issue. and also had concerns with accessing childcare for school-aged children with additional population, saying that's a challenge in the area now, and also commented on the lack of municipal services in the area. So if a public hearing is approved, staff will again circulate to all property owners within 500 meters. Now my chart here is a little bit mixed up because we're really at this stage. We've done the questionnaire, held the PIM, and got comments from reviewing agencies, but we have to go back to first reading because again, we're going to an R1 instead of an R2. But you know, you would consider that a down zoning. So if you had any concerns about the impact of R2, surely you would have expressed them with that as opposed to R1. So staff aren't proposing that we go do another questionnaire or go back to the reviewing agencies, that we now move on to a public hearing following first reading. So that is the recommendation, Mr. Chair, that first reading be given and that staff be authorized to schedule a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Anybody prepared to move the recommended motion?
I'll
Sam,
move
are you moving the motion, Sam? Yes. We have a
Yes.
seconder?
I second it.
Hey, moved by Mr. Balcom and seconded by Eli. Any discussion? Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, John. There's been considerable conversation about the safety of that bridge in South Uniacke, and we've actually written to I believe it was TIR before, and I don't know if we sent another letter to Public Works, because recently they just did a resurfacing, not a deep resurfacing, a casual glide across of parts of the South Uniacke Road, which if you drive down it, well, not today, it's all covered in ice, but early parts of the winter, it was already starting to fall apart again. Is there any way to ask Public Works to take a look at that bridge? Because there was safety concerns, and I even think that when our people drove by and looked at it, there was some concerns by our own people about the safety of that bridge long term.
Yeah, I'm going to throw, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, let Jesse answer that.
Through Mr. Chair, the bridge in question, staff had gone out and looked at the bridge. There had been evident, at the very least, topical damage with the sides being poshed off to the side. When we last went and looked at it, we sent comments to the provincial staff with concerns and requested them follow up and investigate the area. They commented that they have done that, but have not sent us any documents stating the future plans for that structure at this time. So if further information such as that was of interest, staff could pursue that from the province and post on council chambers online if that was a will of executive committee and then council.
Thank you, Jesse. No, I just wanted to make it known, like, we've done everything we can at the municipality to try and address that bridge in talking to the province, because it is a provincial road and we don't own it or have control over it. So I know some of the residents that they're concerned whether this subdivision goes in or not is really not a concern to them. Their main concern is still the safety of that bridge, because it is a dead end road. It butts off onto the trailer park back there. So, you know, if that bridge goes out, there's a lot of people that can be cut off. So I was a little perplexed why there'd be no traffic study or anything done by Public Works on the road or required ahead of time, because I imagine part of that traffic study would be, or assessment would be, the road conditions. So that's all I have, just making those comments that I know we had looked at it and we'd forward stuff on, and I guess we didn't hear anything back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, can you refresh me on the South Uniacke Road? Because there's already over 200 units down there with the trailer park and stuff, and only one access to it. So what's the difference between that and another subdivision that we request that they have two access when they reach 100 units?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's the same principle, but for example, subdivisions in the corridor need two two access, but they can both come out onto Highway 2, so it's not really any different. It's just another arterial road that they're coming out onto.
Yeah, but if one access, if that access, if the bridge fail and stuff, there are going to be a lot of people stuck, and it could be life and death for some people if there's an emergency, right? So I don't know. I'm not gonna oppose this project because of that, but something should be done about that.
Any more discussion? Be looking for the question.
Question.
Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is passed unanimously. Okay, next up, we have Road Gap Project 2. Tippy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the spring of 2010, staff prepared a list of publicly owned, unpaved gap and dead-end roads within the South Corridor and Commercial Growth Management Area. These roads were determined to be unlikely to pass the petition process via Bylaw F100, Local Improvement Bylaw, as individual petitions, because paving such small sections of road would amount to high costs for a small number of property owners. At that point in time, Council moved that all roads identified be petitioned as one. A petition was carried out in the spring of 2011, but it was unsuccessful. In June of 2021, Council made a motion directing staff to prepare a report regarding road gaps for further discussion at a future executive meeting. So staff have identified 21 sections of unpaved publicly owned road within the SCC GMA. 8 of those are municipally owned and 13 provincially owned. Of the 21, 9 are considered true gap roads. So those are roads that fall between sections of paved roads. And the remaining 12 unpaved sections are short dead-end roads. Staff are recommending that Council proceed with the local improvement at their discretion via Section 9.1 of the bylaw without a petition. And just as a note, a local improvement may not be imposed by Council for a period of 3 years after a failed petition. And the most recent petition was carried out and failed in November of 2019. So no local improvement charges may be applied until November of 2022. So in a typical petition process, the distribution of costs looks like this. The province usually contributes 50% of the cost of paving roads that they own upon request. The municipality usually contributes 10% of the cost of paving municipally owned roads as per the bylaw. And the remaining costs are paid by the property owners with direct frontage on the affected road. In this scenario, we're proposing to do things a little bit differently. So the province would contribute 50% of the cost of paving provincially owned roads, with the lump sum contribution being applied to the overall project. The municipality contributing a lump sum of $150,000 towards the overall project. And this number is based on available funds currently in reserve identified by the Department of Finance. And then the remaining costs would be proposed to be divided amongst taxpayers who may directly and or indirectly benefit from the paving of the gap roads. And staff have identified 4 possible taxpayer charge categories. So those are the following. Charge category 1 would be those properties that have direct or dual access to an identified unpaved road to be charged an amount close to what has been paid by property owners for similar local improvements in the past. Charge category 2 is properties with indirect access to an identified unpaved road to be charged an amount less than category 1, but more than 3 and 4. Charge category 3 are properties with either alternative access, but with frontage on an identified unpaved road, or those in the neighborhood that would likely benefit from the paving. They're to be charged an amount less than 1 and 2, but more than 4. And this category includes an estimated number of new lots for the 2 bulk land parcels owned and developed by 7 Lakes Development Group and Lands. And their cost share is estimated to be about $45,000 to $65,000. And then category 4 is all the other properties within the SCC GMA to be charged no more than $75 to $100. And just to give you a little more clarity, here's a picture of each of the categories. So category 1 is that direct and dual access. This property has direct driveway access onto Keys Lane, which is an identified unpaved road, but they also have a driveway onto this already paved road. So they fall into that dual access category. The indirect access category are like these properties on Alder. They are on a paved road, but they have to cross this unpaved section of Hazelwood in order to get out of their subdivision. The alternative and likely benefit categories are those that are maybe on a corner of an unpaved section, but they access onto a paved section, or they're in the neighborhood where it's likely that they'll use these unpaved roads to exit their subdivision, but not necessarily have. And then the final category here, you just see the rest of the properties that would be in the South Corridor Commercial Growth Management Area. And here's just another map showing the breakdown, the properties that are identified as direct or dual access in red, indirect access as yellow, alternative access likely benefit in green, and the rest of the properties in the South Corridor Commercial GMA in blue. So we've prepared 2 scenarios for carrying out the local improvement for your consideration.
Volunteer fire department.
Scenario 1 includes all 21 of the identified roads, so that's gap and dead end, and all 4 charge categories. Scenario 2 includes only the true gap roads, of which there are 9, and 2 dead end roads, Mackenzie Lane and West Court. And in this scenario, we're only considering the first 3 charge categories. So Mackenzie Lane and West Court are proposed to be included in scenario 2 because unlike the other dead end unpaved roads identified, these 2 are part of comprehensive subdivisions that are otherwise already entirely paved or would be if the local improvement proceeds. They're also the only 2 municipally owned dead end unpaved roads. Alternatively, council may choose to petition these 2 roads separately to see if there's interest from the property owners in joining the combined local improvement. So here's a cost breakdown of both scenarios. Again, scenario 1 includes all of the roads and all 4 charge categories. Scenario 2, just the gap roads plus Mackenzie and West, and 3 charge types. So in this column here, you have the total cost of the entire project. The provincial contribution in scenario 1 amounts to about 27% of the cost. The $150,000 allotted from the municipality is about 9%, and the remaining 65 of the total for the taxpayer. And then broken down by these percentages as follows, you'll see in this middle column here, this is approximately what the cost to each property owner would be depending on what category they fell in. So again, we have category 1 above that $3,000 mark and it trickling down to category 4 at $90. And then in scenario 2, we just remove that category 4. So it, and the other roads. So the total is less. And you'll see a drop in the provincial contribution, an increase in the municipal contribution, and the cost per property here. So all costs are approximate and will be updated at the time of the local improvement. The taxpayer charges for categories 1, 2, and 3 may be paid over a period of 10 years plus interest if desired. The taxpayer charge for category 4 in scenario 1 is proposed to be a one-time payment. The distribution of taxpayers' contribution amongst the different charge categories is not fixed and may be adjusted, but is generally suggested to follow the following formula. So category 1 at about 60 to 70%, category 2, 3 to 5, category 3, 15 to 30%, and if category 4 is included, about 15 to 20%. Staff are recommending scenario 2, where only the true gap roads plus Mackenzie Lane and West Court are included, and only the first 3 categories are charged. Scenario 1 is not recommended for the following reasons. The short unpaved dead-end roads included in scenario 1 are not likely to benefit the wider community. Staff recommend the provincially owned sections, so that's all but Mackenzie and West, be paved by the province and taken over by the municipality. And including all properties in the SCC GMA as in scenario 1 places a burden on staff to allocate and manage the proposed charges for a large number of tax accounts, and a financial burden on those taxpayers who may never benefit from paving these roads to help cover the costs. So the recommendation from staff is that Planning Advisory Committee recommend that council authorize staff to proceed with this local improvement on the basis of scenario 2, and that staff be directed to draft an amendment to the local improvement bylaw, and that the road gap project be included in the 2022-26 capital budget for construction in 2023. Thank you.
Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Just a bit of a question. Traditionally, the municipality would pay 10% of the cost of paving municipal roads. In both scenarios here, the municipality is shown as paying $150,000 lump sum. I'm just curious, that's significantly over the 10% mark. And that's for all these roads, whether they're provincial or municipal. I guess I'm looking for some justification for that, and I'm looking to see where this money's coming from. And I'm thinking that most of these roads are not in the rural area, probably none of them of the municipality.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if the Director of Finance might be able to comment on the reserve funds.
Sure, through the chair. So currently we have just over 300,000 in a reserve that's specific to contribute to paving projects that council has set aside. So when we were considering this to bring forward to council, we were looking to see if council would consider more than the 10% in order to get this particular project into completion, where there's so many different just odds and sods, small pieces that are not paved right now throughout various areas that have been demonstrated on the mapping system. So that was what we were proposing in this particular gap project.
Go ahead, Warden.
So we would be paying 10% on all of these gap roads, including the provincial ones, for which the province is already paying 50%. Correct?
Through you, Miss. Sorry, go ahead, Sue.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to point to the chart here. Yes, the idea is that the provincial contribution and the municipal contribution would be distributed over all of the roads within the improvement.
Okay. And this road reserve comes from general rate?
Correct. It's a transportation reserve.
Okay. And I understand, you know, that this is probably the only way that we're going to make this project happen. I guess my concern is with the difficulty and near impossibility of getting gravel roads, most of which are provincially owned, paved in the rural area of this municipality. And so, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Under this, taking it from the reserve, how much would be left in the reserve?
Through the chair, there would be roughly just over 150. We took just less than half of what's in the reserve.
So to be roughly 50%. No, I'm just like, I understand the need for this to happen. The other thing is we do have a lot of municipal roads that we are taking over, and we are, you know, our business park expansion, all those roads we own as well. And those, the maintenance costs are not going down. They're only going to go up. So I'm just, you know, $150,000 doesn't go a long way when you get into paving large sections of roads. So I'm a little concerned with the health of that reserve at this point, but I'll think about it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sue.
Through the chair. So just so there's a full understanding, this particular reserve is just set aside for paving roads like this for a local improvement. There's other reserves and different types of financing for the repaving of the roads that we currently own. Does that help?
Councillor Perry.
Yeah, it does. It also brings up another question. Like, there's been a lot of petitions by a lot of people to pave gravel roads, and a lot of them fail because of the cost. And it's kind of, you know, makes me question, like, you know, did they know that they could have applied for reserve funding to assist in that road to be paved to lower their costs, like we're going to do for these sections of road here? It's a equitable thing for me. Is, you know, is it fair that we're going to assist them because, you know, we stopped paying years ago when a provincial road was paved. You would have it's exactly how it was here. The province paid 50 and the municipality paid 10. Thank goodness we stopped paying 10% on the provincial road. But, you know, it's just going to raise questions in other areas outside the corridor where it will look like, you know, more stuff is being done there than anywhere else. That can be the perception. That's not what I believe is happening, but I don't want to have that, you know, be the perception of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Wait, Sue.
I see CAO also has her hand up. Did you want to go first, Kim? Or I was,
Mr. Chairman. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was just going, when we do a petition for paving, that 10% for a municipal road would be included in the numbers that people are considering. We did go with 150,000 here just because there needs to be some incentive if council wants to get these road gaps paved. And the folks who live on these roads, there's very few of them that, or some of these roads, I guess, a lot of the people don't even drive over them. So they're not going to sign a petition, or there might only be 2 or 3 people to sign the petition. If council wants to drop that to 60,000 or 10% of the project, they can certainly do that. It just redistributes the funds over under, you know, the scenario 2, you're going to be looking maybe at, you know, instead of 165, maybe it's a charge of $300 for the scenario 3, or however that plays out in the numbers, but council can certainly do that. But the reserve that was set aside is specifically for this petition type paving.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Tingley.
Can I confirm what streets we're talking about here? The other 7?
The way you got me down here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can see, I don't know if you can read those on the map there. So we've got Locks Road, Bakery Lane, Shawnee Lane, Boyd Avenue, Wilson Road, Donaldson Avenue, Mackenzie Court, West Court, Brook Court, Horn Road, Miller Road, School Road, Keys Lane, Mariah Drive, Brookside Avenue, Carla Dawn, Acorn Avenue, Hazelwood Avenue, Eisner Road, Green Road Extension, and Martin Court. And those would be all in scenario 1. The ones that are removed from scenario 2 are these ones that you mostly see in the middle here and at the south side that aren't part of the comprehensive subdivisions. And then Bakery Lane would be removed as well.
So I'm just trying to understand here. So these roads that were listed in Lance, they're included in it, like Keys, Brookside. Yeah, okay. These streets, like Lance is, well, all of the corridor area is basically an urban area, and these streets have been dirt for 20 years or maybe more in some cases. And I don't see any other way of getting them paved other than to do something like this. Now, I don't know whether we want to allow 10% or $150,000 or whatever. Like I'm obviously I'd be fine with the $150,000 because some of this is in District 7. But you know, a lot of these people have waited 20 years to get something done here. Some of the streets, there's like somebody else mentioned, there's few houses on, so there's not as many taxpayers to cover the cost. I'm going to make a motion that we go with this motion as it's presented.
Hey, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hebb. There's quite a few on here before. You all have leeway to speak. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So those people have been petitioned so many times and they don't want their street paved. And now we're gonna give them more money to help them to get those streets paved. So we have the same thing here on Lake Crest Drive, and be prepared for another 150,000 to cover that if you wanna give one side 10%, because another 10% on the top of the 50% on Lake Crest could pass the petition too. So if we want to do it in one part of the municipality, we better be prepared to do it in everywhere. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we just have to remember that we're just referring to these gap roads. I mean, like I've got a lot of subdivisions in, well, definitely in District 10 in Enfield that have dirt roads, but we're not considering repaving roads like that. We're just talking about gap roads that have unfortunately fell between two paved sections because of the way things went between developments that happened. I definitely would be more interested in the second option of just the gap roads and the two cul-de-sacs that result from that. But I am interested, if maybe Jesse might be able to weigh in on this. Do you have any kind of figures for what it costs to grade and maintain these gap roads annually, Jesse? I know my residents are crying for the potholes to be filled. Seems like every other month at least.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I don't have exact figures, but I can give you generalized costs or comments on that. So through the service corridor area, there's increased traffic on gravel roads versus you would see it elsewhere, that especially when you're tied into subdivisions. So you see a higher increase in potholes, especially at intersections where there's stops and starts. There's a few famous ones for just major wear and tear. Boyd and Wilson is one of them. Brookside in general is just an interconnection of the entire subdivision, and Lance that has had historical issues as well. The cost to build a gravel road is cheaper. The cost to maintain year over year is more expensive, and it's variable. It's really hard to predict. So things that can happen is, especially in Nova Scotia, where we dance around the freezing mark and the freeze thaw, you can really do some damage on gravel roads. And in serviced areas, we experience more significant damage than we would on just repairing just the gravel sections. We had an incident in Lance where 2 manholes were hit in the last 2 weeks. Hit right off, and then there's a wide opening, and there's action required. There's just more things, right? The road goes up and down because of the freeze thaw. The manholes do not, and so there's just unique cost triggers that occur along these gap sections. They're hard to predict, but they never go away in the current condition.
I guess I was just trying to get an idea of, the money that we are putting out on these year after year to try and maintain these gap roads. And I think the thing about these true gap roads is that if we could get them cleaned up, it's my understanding that would be the end of them, right? That circumstance will not happen going forward in our municipality.
Mr. Chair, maybe I could comment on that. Certainly in the serviced areas, our standard has changed. So any new subdivisions have to have paved roads. So yeah, you won't get any more of these in the serviced areas.
Okay, so by cleaning them up, then that would put an end to this whole gap road, you know, that we've been hearing about year after year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sitting here thinking, I think the long-term plan, if I'm understanding it right, is to get rid of all the gravel roads in the growth managed area over time. Am I hearing that right?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, that would be scenario one, and that's not what we're recommending just because of the increased cost and the lack of benefit to the wider community, I guess. So it's a more, so no, this project doesn't get rid of all of them. It gets rid of all the gaps, but not all the gravel roads.
How many would be left following the scenario that you're presenting?
Do you want to go back to the map, Tippy?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go. So there were 21 roads in scenario 1. And then in scenario 2, it was 11. So there would be 10 roads left.
So Mackenzie Lane and West Court, are they be paved?
They're being proposed in scenario 2, yes.
Okay, and that cost would go to the residents?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, it would be broken down as seen in scenario 2 here.
Okay, because I don't see any benefit on the subdivision that surrounds West Court, that they would use West Court since it's a cul-de-sac and they would have to go in and come out just for the sake of driving on it. So there's still going to be gravel roads left over when this project is presented and completed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there would be.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair. The West Court is really the anomaly. So if you look at the map on the screen,
yes,
the properties in Lance subdivision beyond the roads in question would all contribute a small amount towards the project, but the people in the Elmwood subdivision would not, because West Court is at the back of that subdivision. It's really an anomaly. There's nobody in that subdivision that would benefit from any of these roads being paved. So West Court the people in Elmwood wouldn't be subject to that charge.
What about Brook Court? It's a provincial road. I see it's on the map here. Would those costs be passed on to the homeowners?
For you, Mr. Chair, so this map is showing all 21 roads. Right. So this would include, if we were doing scenario 1 with all the roads, including Brook Court, then yes, the proposal is to include that category 4, which would be everything in blue here in the corridor commercial growth management area. But if we're looking at scenario 2, then Brook Court isn't included.
No, I'm just thinking about a way how do we get rid of the gravel roads over time, that's all. To the betterment of the municipality. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rhino.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, this report lacks the visualization. To look at a map that is so small and is for me very hard. I would have appreciated either photos or a video, but obviously we didn't get that. My question is, this municipal portion, where did we establish that transportation fund? Did we establish if that was a general fund or coming from another area?
The chair.
Go ahead, Sue.
So that particular reserve is on the general tax rate because it falls under transportation and roads are under that.
Well, I can see maintaining roads and costing of roads and everybody paying for them for business parks because there's a shared benefit for everybody. But it's gonna be some hard for me to explain to a person, let's say, on the many gravel roads that I have, that a portion of the taxes they've been paid over the years will be going to pave in these gap roads in another area, knowing full well that they will never see any pavement on their own gravel road. So that makes it some very difficult for, as a counselor for me. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rhino. Warden Rolston.
Yeah, following along on the discussion, if it was just the 10% that the municipality traditionally always pays towards road paving projects, it would be much simpler. And I understand that we wanted to provide some incentive, but we don't need to provide any incentive for this. This is not something we're petitioning. This is something we're imposing. And we're telling the people, this is what we're going to do and you're going to pay for it. So, you know, I don't get any incentive value there. I do agree that this is a good project and it needs to be done. But, and maybe I missed it in prior discussions or that, I wasn't aware that we were going to significantly increase the municipal contribution to that. And if we're going to do that, then as Councillor Musa has said, we need to be prepared to increase municipal contributions in roads in other areas. And I get roundly scolded over roads much more often than I ever did now. Even though they're provincial roads, people don't really care. So, you know, when I'm able to truthfully explain the situation and the ownership of the roads and that municipal tax dollars, you know, I can explain that. So as Councillor Rhino says, this would be a little more difficult to explain, and it's not huge dollars. But I look at all of the other residents in the corridor area, in this area even, who petitioned and paid to have their roads paved based on the payment formula that we have. So now some of these folks are being told, we're going to pave up the gaps, and that's a great thing. Not only are you going to have to pay because you might have an indirect benefit, but you're also going to pay again because we're giving a much larger, I mean, when I look at the cost of the whole project, 10% of it would be 60,000, but that's on the whole project. That's not on municipal roads in the project. So you might be able to sell me on 10% of the whole project even as a one-time thing. I'm having trouble with the 25%. I'm just trying, and I know it's a good project. I know it should be done, but it's a tough sell. And at the end of the day, when I explain how roads work in East Hants and how they're paid for, I like to be consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. All right, the Warden Rolston was the last on before the motion was made. All discussion now will be directed towards the motion. Councillor Musa, towards the motion. You're muted, Councillor.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, do we have any other gravel road in the corridor area that possibly people gonna be able to subdivide lot past them and pave, so the gap is gonna stay? So if you have a gravel road and you want to put a new subdivision of that gravel road, you're gonna create another gap, right? Is that possible? I know it's possible in Mount Union.
I haven't really looked at the Yeah, I guess there are some of those roads you might be able to create additional lots, yeah.
Yeah, so you're not gonna get rid of all the gaps. So we're gonna have another, we're gonna deal with that problem all the time. And if we're gonna keep giving 25% on every road that's gonna be a gap, that's gonna be a problem too. Plus, one more thing, I think when the corridor takes 75% of the gas tax for infrastructure, those roads are part of the infrastructure. So I think the gas tax is more appropriate to take money from to fix those if you want to do it this way. Because that was the reason why the corridor takes 75%. I don't know, I wasn't there, but probably the warden can comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I just, I think there's no municipal scenario, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no municipal scenario where we create another gap by extending a road. Any roads that would be left over would be provincial roads that are unpaved that may be able to be expanded. Is that a true statement?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I was just looking at the map quickly, looking at land off of Eisner Road, Bakery Lane. I'm not sure where else you could still create lots, but it looks like those roads, there would be some land where you could create lots. And those, yes, both of those are provincial.
Right.
Thank you, Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the motion. I certainly would have preferred a list of the roads being done. This map, in my bad ad side, is just a blur. There's a few lines. Having worked for DOT, I know where a lot of them are, but I would have preferred to have a list of exactly, what area they're in. Having said that, it says the scenario that there's 2 dead end roads to be paved. What roads would they be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in scenario 2, it's Mackenzie Lane and West Court. So in looking at the map, West Court is here. It's this cul-de-sac at the back of the Elmwood subdivision. And Mackenzie Lane is just off of Boyd Avenue.
Okay.
And the list of roads were in the staff report as well.
Gosh, I think I read it, but I didn't see any list of roads, but maybe I didn't go far enough, I guess. My fault. Bakery Lane is a provincial road, and personally, I don't see any need to pave that. People have been driving in and out that road for years, and if they want to pave, they should have to pay for it. I don't think I think we should be looking more at the road gaps than anything else. Eisner Road, is that the Eisner Road in Lance? It is? Okay, well, that's a half a kilometer. And that's a provincial road. That's always been gravel ever since I've been around. I can't see why we should have to contribute to paving for that. There's no road gap there. And I see you, Kim, but I just have another Miller Road. Is that the one in Elmsdale?
Yes.
And that's another road. That's a provincial road. It's short and it's not a road gap. The people have been going there for years. There's only a few houses up there. I don't think we should be doing these provincial roads that are dead end. The road gaps to me is the ones that need to be done. And I'll give you a good example. I think it's Shauna Lee that goes from Boyd Avenue through to Alderney Drive. And there's 4 houses on that. 2 of the houses have an exit driveway onto that, which is never used. But there's a set of mailboxes there. And that's just a crossroad between these 2 roads. And here these people have to pay for a road that the majority of people from that subdivision use because of the mailboxes that are there. And I know from grading that years ago, it gets extremely rough there. And I understand the frustrations there. But to have these 4 houses, pay for that little section road, which none of them ever use. So there's all kinds of holes in this. And I think we're paving too many provincial roads. I think that should be, and especially these dead end roads. I think we should stick to the road gaps that are there. Those are the ones that different people use. And as far as the extra money, I kind of look at that as a give and take. And I know the Royal residents not going to agree with that, but sometimes we got to give up to make the better of the whole municipality. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Kim.
Just to ensure that we're on the same page, the motion on the table would include only those roads that are true gap roads. So the motion that you're speaking to wouldn't include Eisner, Miller, whichever other one you had mentioned. It's truly the ones that are inside those subdivisions. So Shauna Lee is a provincial road, but it would be included because it truly is a gap in the middle of the subdivision. So that's the motion on the table, is to not pay for those provincial dead end roads that are going off your main arteries.
Good, thank you very much.
Councillor Tingley.
Yeah, again, I don't think this is a situation where it's rural against the urban part of East Hants. Sounds like we're getting in a little debate about one area getting 10% and one getting a little bit more. I think everything is situational. This particular situation, I know a lot about some of these road gaps because they're a lot of them are in my district, and they're roads that have been petitioned. They tried to get them paved in the past. There's only maybe one or two, a few homes where on the unpaved section, and those people would not, they couldn't get enough to agree on the petition, so they could never get them paved. And those people get to enjoy the rest of the roads that are paved that other people have already paid for. This is one way to just get this resolved. And you know, you might vote to go for 10%. I don't know on this. I think it would be reasonable to allow the 150 lump sum in this situation. And if I was looking at Councillor Musa mentioned a place in Lakeside or somewhere, if that situation requires the same kind of a resolution, I would be for something like that as well. But in this case, this has got to be done at some point in time. And it's been at a checkmate for a long time. Staff has come up with a recommendation. It looks like it's been worked on since 2010. These people have been waiting for 20 to 25 years to get this resolved. I think it's time to put it to bed.
Thank you. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm just wondering about the 150,000 versus the 10%. I know that there is a motion, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I was actually thinking that the motion was for option one, which I was concerned about that. So the motion is for option two. But in looking at that, maybe people would be more accepting of this if it was down to a different percentage, or 10% versus the 150. You know, is this something that if it doesn't pass, it's something that we can revamp the numbers, or what, you know, just to come to some, you know, to some agreement on how we might be able to get these gap roads cleared up. Thank you.
You want to speak to that, Kim?
Certainly. So council can deal with this motion. If the result is a failed motion, then you can ask for us to come back with different scenarios on the GAP project, and we can certainly put those together because it is a project that needs to be done, whether it's a different percentage from municipality or you know, maybe just a more comprehensive look at just the one scenario that you want to work through. We can do that.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Towards the motion, I will not be able to support the motion because 25% of a total project cost goes against our policies. We have a policy at 10%. I would be willing to accept a 10% of a total project cost, which would be more than what would be normally be contributed on a 10% road, because we are going to be doing this for provincial roads, so it would be extra. It's coming from the general tax fund. These roads have been petitioned, as Mr. Tingley has said, for 20 years. There are many roads throughout the whole municipality that have been petitioned for 20 years that fail for the same reason. And the other side, the other reason why I'm apprehensive to support this is because of all those failed petitions. These people have said they don't want it. Now we're going to enforce an extra cost on them at this current time. I think, you know, I don't know their economic situation, and I hope they're all doing well. But getting a bill for $3,000, whether you got to pay it over 10 years with interest or not, is still a bill for $3,000 that's being mandated on you. So for that, I won't support the motion as written. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if Councillor Tingley, who made the motion, if it might be appropriate to amend the motion that's on the floor.
Well, I'm going to leave it as it is, and
Okay.
if you want to vote it down, maybe we can look at something else afterward. But I think it's very reasonable what's on the floor here. And if anybody went in these subdivisions and looked at the situation, it'd be like having a dirt road partway down Barrington Street in Halifax. It's just ridiculous. And there's got to be a solution to it. A lot of people do want it resolved. I've had a lot of calls in my short time of being on council asking to get this resolved. And a lot of work has already been done on it. This argument over whether it's 60,000 or 150,000, it just doesn't seem reasonable to me, but we'll have a vote on it. And if you want to vote it down, vote it down.
And I'll remind council that all discussion goes through the chair. It's just not free reign. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. I would just say, had there been some consultation on, prior to making an exception to the policy and increase amount for this, that might have helped, because perhaps we could have come to some agreement that yes, we could do this for this project, on the caveat that if we did this, that this would be available or that would be available elsewhere. But it's extremely difficult when you answer to residents, and even if they're not municipal roads, residents like to talk about roads. And as I said, I like being able to be consistent in what I tell them when I answer their questions. So for that reason, I'm going to move an amendment to the motion, which removes the $150,000 lump sum and replaces it with 10% municipal cost, and with the remaining costs being reallocated among the other partners in the project.
We have a seconder for the amendment.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Musa. Keith, you were on before. You can have free reign to speak.
Just a couple of things on that. Is the motion in order? Because it takes away from the original intent of the motion. So that would be my first question.
All it's doing really is changing the costing of it, not really the original intent. The intent is to pave the gaps.
But if I may,
I'm going to let the motion proceed, the amendment proceed. I don't see it change. I don't see it changing the whole intent of the motion.
Okay, I have to abide by your rules. I don't agree with it. But anyway, I'm going to vote against the motion, and for previously stated the reasons. And I'm hoping that Councillor Tingley did not mean to say that anybody on gravel road is ridiculous, or the gravel roads in any area is ridiculous. I hope he didn't mean to say that. But I do invite, if anyone out there to come with me and try to explain to my residents that, this is what we're doing. So rural, urban, it doesn't matter. It's just the fairness of it. And I invite any councillor to try to explain that to some of my residents who live on gravel roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lockwood.
Okay, can you say the motion over again? Because I must have missed something there.
Well, the recommended motion is on the screen, Councillor,
Yes.
and the change being made is instead of a lump sum $150,000 payment, it would be 10%, which would be approximately $60,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Tingley.
I'm off mute now, am I?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I am not pitting to Keith there through the chair. I'm not pitting urban against rural East Hampstead all. And anybody that wants a paved road, I think they should get if they can get a paved road, that would be a good thing. I'm just saying that in this scenario, we have an urban community with a bunch of gaps, paved roads, that it's not a very good situation, and the municipality wants to get it cleaned up, and a lot of the residents want to get it cleaned up, and the staff brought this forward, and I think it's a good motion.
Okay, Councillor Head, to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the amendment, the fund is coming out of the general rate, which is $150,000, and the amendment says about 60,000. So that's 90,000 that's coming out of the general rate. We're in a pandemic right now, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are struggling, and for them, the extra cost would certainly be added to them. I can't see the provincial government ever increasing their portion of it. So it's going to be left up really to the taxpayers, the residents of that area, that's going to come up with the extra cost. And where this fund has been there for a number of years, and that's what this fund is for. And as Councillor Musa has brought up, maybe we may have to use that in the rural part of the area too as well. I think this is something that's been going on ever since I've been here on council, and I think this is a chance to get it cleaned up, and we have to watch out by putting these bills on these residents. A lot of the reasons why it's never been, the petitions are never passed, because they don't usually use the road. It's other people that's in the whole subdivisions that use it more than them. So I think we have to give a little bit of compassion here to the residents to drop from 150 down to 60. It's going to put an awful increase on the bill going to them. And I think at this time of the pandemic, and I know they got 10 years to pay it, but still that's a lot of money. So I will not be in support of the amendment.
Okay, seeing no one else, be looking for the question on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
on the
ma'am.
amendment, I think I just need to, before we vote on the amendment, to add some clarification as to why the amount was higher than 10%, because we did have that discussion. Historically, council has had other projects where they've contributed more than 10% to these types of projects. Ones that come to mind are McMillan Drive. Council contributed 20% to the paving of that road. And really that was for the greater social good, where that road leads to a school. The amount paid for pavement was in recognition that the greater community benefited from that pavement. And the other two examples that come to mind are where the municipality in the past had not serviced areas that were sort of came together. So where Enfield met where Elmsdale met Enfield, and Cayley Lane was not serviced through both of those systems. Council did contribute some general tax rate funds for that project, because again, it was for that greater good of filling in those gaps that by our development policies over the years didn't get filled in to start with. So there was some rationale behind picking a different number than 10%. And I wanted to share that with councillors, because not everyone was around when those projects were debated by council. Thank you.
Councillor Tingley.
In light of that information, is it possible to amend the motion back to $150,000 contribute?
No, it is not, Councillor. If the amendment fails, your original motion will stand. If the amendment passes, then it will be shifted.
That's
yeah.
So okay.
We will be voting on the amendment first, and if it passes, then the original motion instead of 150 will be 60. If the amendment fails, the original motion will go forward with 150,000.
Understood.
Be looking for a question on the amendment.
Question.
Question's been called on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment signify by raising your right hand and saying aye, and keep your hands up, please. Okay, we have 4 in favor, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 6 in favor. The motion has failed. The amendment has failed. So now I'll be looking for a question on the amended or on the main motion.
Excuse me,
Question.
Question is called. Just a second, Warden, you're muted.
would it have failed when you include, much as I'd like it? We have to include the numbers of the public members in the total to determine.
It has failed. Yeah. No. Now, question on the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4, 5, 6. Well, now the main motion has failed. I believe all the nays, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The main motion has failed.
Mr. Chair, could we have the names read aloud for the recording, please?
Okay, the nays is myself, Warden Rolston, Councillor Knockwood, Councillor Musa, Councillor Rhino, Councillor Perry, and I believe there was a public member. Did you vote nay on that? Either one of the public members? And the public member Balcom.
Thank you.
I believe that is 7, is it not, Shirley?
That's correct.
Okay, so main motion has failed. So. Warden Rolston.
I don't want folks to think I'm against the GAP project. I'm not. So I would like to make a motion that staff bring a further report on the GAP project scenario 2, outlining possible alternatives to funding this GAP.
Moved by Warden Rolston. Are you second on that, Councillor Rhino?
Yes, but I'd like to say something, please.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Councillor.
I'll second the motion, but I'd like to see either some good photos or some videos along to better than that map, please.
Yeah, I believe that is going to happen, Councillor. So, Councillor Knockwood. To the motion. You're muted, Councillor.
Yeah. Now, the motion, can we include like Mount Uniac areas? Because, I think the whole entire municipality should benefit off this, the GAP road projects.
I can't speak for Mount Uniac, not familiar. I don't believe there are any road gaps there now. Is there, Councillor Musa or Councillor Perry? Not to my knowledge.
Okay, I thought there was. Okay.
Until now, we don't, but we would soon, probably.
Okay, so
Councillor
Perry.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not against, like the warden says, against getting rid of the gaps, but we do have policies and procedures, and if we don't follow them, then there's no real point in having them. However, I do also think that, as much as we're talking about it here, we need to also hear, from the public in that area. Are they going to be okay with this being imposed on them? Right? Because, it is tough times right now, and imposing, no matter what the fee is, whether it's 3 or 8 or 2, sometimes imposing fee of $50 can be the breaking point for somebody. So I would like to see, as part of, staff's report coming back, is a little bit of consultation with the people that are going to be affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Hebb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Perry. Petitions have already been taken, and the petitions, they've certainly said that they don't want to pay any extra for it. And that's what the problem is for the last number of years. And it's come to the point that we have a council have to make a decision to rectify some of these problems. And yes, it's going to be a cost to them, but like I said, if we could get some money from the general tax fund, would help pay for that. And a lot of people in the quarter, they pay general tax too. So that's why I would like to see the scenario 2 go through. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, sometimes, and it's not always all the people who have refused it, but not enough to carry it through. And as you say, it is a problem that we've just kind of carried over, maybe not myself, but I've been hearing about gap roads for a long time as I lived in Alderney Drive. You know, if we petitioned people on who wanted to pay an extra levy for a rink that they never enter, you know, if we go down that road, but I realize that this directly impacts. One thing I'll say about Boyd Avenue as a resident of the very top end of Alderney is there are dozens and dozens, if not 100 people who use that exit who don't live on it. So I definitely think in going forward, hopefully with another little study on this, that in that situation in particular, that tax could be spread out among all the residents that use it, because it is a really large number in that particular incident. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garden-Cole. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So those residents have been petitioned twice, 3 times, and they refuse it. They're the one who live on those roads. They're the one who's collecting the dust from those roads, and they're happy with it because they cannot afford to do it. So to please the other people that want to use those roads without going through a one bump here and one bump there and one pothole here, and make those people pay for it, I don't think it's fair. I think it's fair that if you want to fix that problem, everybody who live in the area should pay. Because to impose $3,000 on somebody who doesn't want it, just to please somebody that gone on this road all the time and doesn't want to pay for it, I don't think that's fair. That's a good reason to pay it. I think if you want to fix a problem, everybody should be the whole area should pay for it, because anybody who uses this road should pay for it. Like, they're not collecting the dust, they're just using it, and the people who are collecting the dust and living through it all the time, they don't want to pay for it. I think that's my point. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Seeing no one else, I'll be looking for the question on the motion.
Question.
Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion, are you in favor, Councillor Tingley? And the motion has passed unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, can I get a point of clarification?
Yeah, the motion states that it will go back and staff will come with some more options on how to pay for the for scenario 2 with some different options of payments.
Councillor Perry had mentioned that he would want consultation done. I'm not sure how we would do that before we bring a report back, because we have no information to go out to the public with, and normally that would be in that petition process, but we're not even close to that.
Councillor Perry, do you want to offer some insight in your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts were, I'm not looking for like a public meeting or anything on this. It's just, I think part of the like what Councillor Musa put forward and what Councillor Garden-Cole put forward is the larger number of people that are using it should be considered in a proposal. I don't know whether it's a local area rate or an improvement charge or whatever, to make it a little more fair for that area to benefit from. And you know, you widen it out, and yeah, like Councillor Hebb said, you know, everybody pays general tax funds, and if it's a larger group of people, it's a lot easier to divvy out a lot more money. But it's we're in the middle of a pandemic with massive inflation, rising house cost. I've received 10 calls in the last 3 days about tax assessments and about tax bills. Imposing $3,000 or more on people that have already said they don't want it, I think it could be a little hasty. Anyways, that's just my thoughts. I'm not looking for any public meetings or anything like that. Just taking their comments in, and maybe in the report, the previous petition comments that they provided with justification of maybe why they said no in the past. Just that would be enough. The information should be on file. We don't need to go out and get any new information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Tingley.
I just wanted to say again, like this situation is situational, and Councillor Perry raises a good point going out to other residents in the area, but they've already paid their road frontage, and it's pretty hard to go back to them and ask them to contribute, but maybe that's what we'll end up doing. And we've already heard that other situations where the municipality has contributed more than 10%, 20%, or whatever. What do you say to these residents that would like to get their gap repaired? When we're hung up on 10%, seemed to be a big factor here. What do you say to the residents here when we've already contributed 20% somewhere else?
We'll have those factors in the, through you, Mr. Chair, we can have all those factors taken into consideration in various scenarios in the report we bring back.
Thank you. Well, you done, Councillor? You have a rebuttal there? Or?
I have no rebuttal. I totally accept it, but I just wanted to point out that one of the arguments for not voting for this was the 150 versus 10%. And we just heard that it's been done elsewhere. Like, how does that become an argument here? And I'm willing to wait to see what comes back, but I just can't believe we didn't resolve this, for the size of the matter.
That's all, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
For you, Mr. Chair, just a comment that illustrates the dangers of going outside of council's policies on how to fund things. Because once you have a good project that seems worthy of support and you go outside that funding policy and you fund more, then folks think you have set a precedent. And then it unfortunately becomes, well, this project is as good as that one, it should get more too. This project is as good as that one, it should get more too. And I would suggest that if council feels the policies that we have in place are not adequate, that perhaps that's what should be reviewed. I never believe that making one exception to a policy or two should set precedent for doing it every time something happens. But that's the conundrum we find ourselves in, and trying to justify why one project was more deserving than another. And that's the hesitancy around going outside of the policy. And if the policy needs to be reviewed, so be it. But anyway, those are just my comments on answering those questions. I've been here a long time, and I would have to go back and review the circumstances because they don't spring immediately to my mind as to when or how it happened. I was here, I probably should remember it, but over 24 years, I don't remember every single discussion. I'm not as young as I once was. But I do support getting the road gap done. There may be some other creative way of funding it. I don't know, but it was problematic to explain to folks why we were going with a lump sum of $150,000 when we really had no supporting reasons as to why we should go with that amount instead of the amount in the policy. So those are my concerns, and it's a tough one for me because I do want to see these road gaps paved, I really do. But I still want to be able to answer my residents when they call and ask me questions. I still want to be able to give them the consistent answers as to why things are done the way they're done.
Okay, that concludes this discussion. We'll move on to the next one. Next up, we have protective fencing for construction sites, Bylaw P-900-1, and amendment to Bylaw P-900, Building Bylaw. And Debbie, you're on tap for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at their October 2021 meeting, council passed motion C21 through 17 to direct staff to prepare a report to investigate options to secure construction sites. The motion stemmed from complaints that had been received regarding construction sites that were unsecure or where fencing had fallen down around the construction site. In response to council's direction, amendments are being proposed to the building bylaw to regulate protective construction site fencing. As part of planning staff's research on construction site fencing, or hoarding as it's sometimes referred to, staff reviewed regulations from Halifax and Toronto. In both cities, fencing is part of a much more comprehensive set of regulations on construction site standards. Halifax uses an administrative order respecting construction management and requires construction companies to submit a construction management plan to address items identified in the order. Toronto has a municipal code related to building construction and demolition that regulates construction site fencing. Planning staff suggests the level of regulation and detail in these two documents are not necessary for East Hants. And I did reach out to a couple other jurisdictions. So I reached out to the town of Truro and to the city of Moncton, and neither one of those communities had any regulations in regards to construction site fencing. For the single issue protective construction site fencing, staff feel that amendments to bylaw P900 building bylaw should be sufficient. Protective fencing would be required to be erected where it has been determined to be necessary prior to a building permit being issued. And if the fencing was to fall down, we could use the MGA to issue a SOT. The municipal solicitor has reviewed the proposed regulations. So the following two definitions are proposed to be added to the bylaw. A commercial construction site means a construction site where the use of the property containing the construction site following the completion of the construction work will be either a multi-unit dwelling over 4 units or a commercial institutional building over 230 meters squared or a combination of both. Construction fence means a fence required to be erected on a commercial construction site under the provisions of this bylaw. And then under the section 4.7 of the bylaw, it says that a building official may, if applicable, withhold a building permit until satisfied that the following requirements have been met. And so that would be H, construction fence has been installed on a commercial construction site where municipal water and or wastewater services are available, and when the commercial construction site is located adjacent to a residential building, sidewalk, walkway, pathway, or other pedestrian link, and shall be installed in accordance with the following provisions. And so we've outlined the provisions here. The construction fence shall be erected and in place on the property prior to commencement of construction work, shall be erected on the property around the perimeter of the construction site so as to fully enclose the construction site, shall be a minimum height of 1.8 meters, shall be built of wood, chain link, or welded wire panels, shall be built to deter entry to the site by an unauthorized persons, shall be maintained and kept in a sturdy and upright position, and shall at all times be well anchored and secure. And the building official may authorize modifications to the construction fencing provisions where satisfied that the proposed modifications meet the intentions of the bylaw and do not compromise public safety. Options. So if planning advisory committee and council are not satisfied with the approach that staff have developed, staff continue to complete additional research and develop an alternative method of regulating protective construction site fencing. Alternatively, planning advisory committee and council may decide not to require fencing around construction sites. And the recommendation is that planning advisory committee recommend the council give first reading to bylaw P900-1, an amendment to bylaw P900 building bylaw to regulate protective construction fencing. And below is the recommended motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Rhino.
Yeah, so if I can understand this right, then construction fencing would be a 4-unit that started a 4-unit complex. Would that be right?
That's correct.
All right.
So, would not start at a 4 after over 4 units, so it would start at the 5th unit. So you can do 4 units and then would start at the 5th.
4-unit without a fence, and then after we reach the 5th, then we have to require a fence completely around the construction site, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So if this motion passes, what are the penalties if somebody does not comply? That's something we don't talk about when we create something like this. Is it going to be a cease construction until it's fixed? How is that handled on that end?
So the way that this bylaw is set up is that the actual fencing has to be put in place prior to the applicant receiving a building permit. Now, if the fencing falls down, or something happens during the construction process, we can use the MGA to issue a SOT. At some point in time, what we have to do is develop, they're called a SOT schedule. So it comes up with a list of fees for some of our bylaws. Now, this process takes a really long time because we have to work with the Department of Justice. So that's why we haven't gone with the SOT schedule at this point in time yet. But we can use the SOTs that are available within the MGA. It's just that the minimum fee is $237, but you can ticket a person every single day.
So, okay, so they can't just say the heck with it and I'll wait for a week till I'm really forced to do this. So they can be sought every day. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
I guess, to me, if it was a dangerous situation, has the building inspector the ability to shut this down until it's rectified if it becomes that way?
From the way that the bylaws created, they can't issue a stop work order. Now, they have their own regulations within the building code that talks about safety around construction sites. But I don't know if they have never really used that section before, so I don't know how far it could actually go. But through just this bylaw, they can't issue a stop work order.
So
John might be able to give a little bit more because he did talk to building inspectors about this as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So at the front end, if they start construction without the construction fencing in place, they won't have a permit because we won't give them a permit. They can get a footing permit. They just can't get the full permit until they put the construction fencing in place. At that point, we could issue a stop work order because they don't have a permit. It's sort of the fencing leads to the permit. The lack of the permit leads to a stop work order.
Yes.
But no, we checked with the solicitor and we can't issue a stop work order just for the lack of fencing.
So for the lack of fencing, if it went down and it's a dangerous situation, that dangerous situation could, and then workers could keep on going and the dangerous situation could remain. And I guess really for the lack of safety, you know, that is a safety issue. And I can give you a ticket, but if you're not going to fix it, the safety issue still remains. So so I'm just thinking more so about small children, being with what they may and inquisitive, and especially in an urban build-up area. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. So, we've all discussed this, and the example that I'll use is the development going on Highway 2 in Enfield, where at the time that this was brought to our attention, it was fenced probably 80%, but the opening to it, which is right on the sidewalk, was open. No one had been there in some time at the construction site. There was a foundation dug and it was full of water. So it was literally a tragedy waiting for some inquisitive child to come along. And reached out to the developer numerous times and came back with nothing. And finally, he put a bungee cord across to hold it, which in no way is secure. So now the most recent development at that particular site, who once again, there's been no development there in months, it's at a standstill, is they came last week and took all their fencing down. So now it's just the development in mid-stage with their foundation full of water and no fencing. And seems like they're beyond reproach.
Debbie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and the director can confirm with me, but we do have the dangerous and unsightly premises. And I know when I talked to the city of Moncton, that's what they use for situations where they have something where that is particularly dangerous and the construction company hasn't resolved that issue, that they use their dangerous and unsightly regulations through the MGA. And I think we could use something similar in this situation. John, I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we could. I mean, it's a bit of a clunky tool, but it's why it's better to have clear rules of where fencing is required. So I think this is a good change to the bylaw, but yeah, any dangerous situation on a property, we could use the MGA, the dangerous or unsightly premises provisions.
Okay, because you know, I'm liking what I'm reading there, and I appreciate what was done up. I'm assuming that when you say that you use the word secure at the bottom end of that you're meaning like secure at the end. I know you might have meant secure as in, you know, standing securely, but also secure at the end of the workday when the construction site is vacated. But yeah, we don't want to be setting up rules that we aren't able to enforce.
So that includes secured at the end of the day, doesn't it, John, when they leave the work site?
Debbie, let's see.
So what it says is shall be kept up in times to be anchored and secure. That's referring to the fact that the fencing won't fall down. What we would say so that shall be built to deter entry to the site by unauthorized persons. So that would mean that the site has to be secured as in locked or something like that at the end of the night.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Warden Rolston.
Thank you. I think this is a good start, but I don't think it goes far enough. And with regards to using dangerous and unsightly to remedy the situation as it is now, that doesn't work because it's not fast enough. By the time we go through that process, they could have finished the building and moved on. So I understand that under this bylaw, the building inspector could not issue a stop work order. Can we create a bylaw where the building official could create a stop work order and issue a fine at the same time? And because I'm hearing, we don't know, you know, it's going to take some time before we can figure out how much to fine them. So this isn't really helping us right now, even if we pass it, because obviously anyone who is in breach of this bylaw, we don't know how much to fine them. And another issue I have is that you withhold the building permit, which is fine, but often the dangerous situation would start when they put the footings in, when they excavate and put the footings in. So I think we need something that covers it right from the get-go. And there must be something under the MGA that would allow us to do that.
Debbie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, a stop work order is only issued through the National Building Code. That's how building inspectors can do that, and through the Nova Scotia Building Act. So that's how they can issue stop work orders. In relation to SOTs and their schedules and their tickets, so the MGA has the ability for bylaws to issue SOTs. It's a fee of $237. It doesn't matter what it is. But what I'm referring to in relation to a SOT schedule is a summary offense ticket schedule. We have to work with the Department of Justice and to develop that SOT schedule. So it's not that it's hard. It's just that it takes a long time to actually create that schedule and get it into the bylaw. And it was my understanding that that council had wanted these regulations put in place at an earlier time. The other thing when it comes to clearing land is that the land use bylaw doesn't have any regulations indicating that developers can't clear or prepare their land for development. So essentially, anybody, whether you're building a house or a commercial development or whatnot, you have the ability to go out, clear your land and prep it for construction, whether that's digging a hole or not. We'd have to probably amend the land use bylaw, John, if we wanted to put in something in regards to not clearing land ahead of time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, or have a breaking soils permit process the way some other municipalities do.
Well, if I'm still on.
No, you're not. You're way down now, Sandra.
No.
Warden Rolston, you still have the floor.
Well, I smiled to myself when I saw that we compared the city of Toronto and who was it, HRM? I forget now, as to what they did. And I thought, well, no, we don't need what they do, but maybe we do. And I understand that they both offer under operate under different charters than we do. And I think we should perhaps pass this, but I would see this as a starting point only. I don't think it goes far enough. We've had one example now where we're in an exposed situation, or our people are in an exposed situation, and we don't appear to be able to do anything about it in a timely manner. And I just, you know, what governs our dangerous and unsightly bylaw? Could we amend that to be more reactive? I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to be able to do more and to be able to do it faster. Because when these incidents take place, if there's no stop work order, and you have a company like this company who simply isn't going to keep the fencing up and is just going to do whatever they want to do, and you can fine them $200 and some every day for 100 days if you want, or 300 days. What are you going to do if they don't pay it? I mean, you might be able to take them to court and eventually get some money, but that's not going to fix the situation that caused the problem. So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to do something more in depth than this. And that's not saying that I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This provides probably good protection for most contractors, but I think we need protection for those that are not interested in being good, you know, safe contractors all the time. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Rhino.
I think the warden has said it adequately. We need something that will give us immediate response and something that can shut things down in an emergency situation. Like she said, this is a great start, but I think we really have to put some meat on the bones on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on the warden remarks, I don't see any difference between a 12-story apartment building in Halifax and a 6-story apartment building in Enfield. They both dangerous. They both need to be secured. And one of the idea I have, same as dangerous and unsightly, if you don't secure it, we send a company to fence it and we send you the bill. We send the bill to the owner or to the contractor or whoever want, but we have it in the rules. So I think that's the easiest fix. If you don't do it, we're going to do it and it's going to cost you more.
All, Councillor.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Garden Cole.
Actually, it's just been said by my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All right. Seeing no one else, is somebody going to move the motion? Do you want to send it back with staff to come back next month, perhaps with some updated language in it? What is your wishes? Councillor Rhino.
I would move that this be sent back to staff to come back that will bring something that we can consider for immediate response on issues such as brought up today. Thank you.
We have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Knockwood. Debbie, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I think John's going to say the same thing. Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did want to say that there is something that we can do under Part 15, that's the dangerous or unsightly provisions of the MGA, where we perceive there's an immediate life safety issue. We can, without coming to council or, you know, the usual time involved with our orders, we can take immediate action. That I guess the issue that we have is we don't have any standards right now for fencing around construction sites. Once this is in place, I think that'll help us in making those determinations whether we should take immediate action or not.
Thank you, John. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. So if this, I guess what I'm wondering is, what could our immediate action be with the immediate situation that is taking place as we speak?
As through Mr. Chair has stated, we could engage a contractor to secure a construction site and send that bill to the property owner.
And with what we have in place currently, or what we are going to put in place, we would have the ability to do that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can do that now, but I guess the trouble we have is that we don't have any standards for what we consider a safe construction site right now. So, you know, if somebody digs a shallow excavation to put footings in, at what point does it become dangerous? You know, if it's 4 feet deep or 6 feet, like there's no, I guess there hasn't been a lot of thought put into this. What constitutes a dangerous site?
All right. Kim, do you want to weigh in here?
I do. I think the question really for under dangerous and unsightly is that what constitutes a danger, and what would council agree constitutes a danger? Because I'm the one who has to sign off on, you know, go erect an $8,000 fence and send the property owner the bill. And I'm not really inclined to do that unless I have some real concrete backing from council that is something council is going to support. So I think if you have those discussions maybe next month about what does council consider dangerous and what do you want us to act on, because that is a sort of an immediate action that we wouldn't be consulting on. Sometimes you might agree with us and sometimes you might not. So again, getting that guidance from council as to when you want us to act would be important going forward.
Yeah, Warden Rolston.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to support Councillor Rhino's motion to bring back a report or further information next month, but I don't think that precludes us giving first reading to this. And then at least we're partway along the road should we decide. Giving first reading doesn't make it so, but should we decide that this is part of the solution, it moves us more quickly towards that. So I will be supporting the motion on the floor, but I will then be moving the motion to give this first reading just simply to give us a leg up on the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. All right, seeing no one else, I'll be looking for question on the motion. Question's been called. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion is passed unanimously. Warden Rolston.
And I would move the recommended motion that Planning Advisory Committee recommend to Council that they give first reading to Bylaw P-900-1, an amendment to Bylaw P-900, building bylaw to regulate protective construction fencing.
Second.
Moved by Warden Rolston, seconded by Councillor Musa. Any discussion? I would just weigh in with a comment that I think the same as the warden. When you dig a hole to put the footings in, your fence should be up because that's your hole, not just to be able to go in and dig a hole, put a footing in, and then walk away from it. I mean, that's that doesn't make a bit of sense to me at all. So anyway, question has been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that is passed unanimously. On to the next item. Plan update, floodlands background paper, and that's up for Rachel. Go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. I'll just be a second. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So flooding is a natural event that can occur for a variety of reasons in Nova Scotia, including heavy rainfall, snowmelt, ice jams, high tides, and storm surges. And the occurrence of flooding in Nova Scotia has resulted in the development of a statement of provincial interest regarding flood risk areas, and that's administered by Municipal Affairs and Housing. East Hants has multiple major rivers and waterways flowing through it, which has taken
and has taken steps in the current planned area regarding floodproofing and development management. So in 2013, there was a floodplain study of the Shubenacadie River and a portion of the 9 Mile River, and this was an update of a previous floodplain mapping study. And those new floodplains lines were incorporated into 2016 plan update or plan. Several major rivers in the planned area in East Hants are not covered by this floodplain study, and Council have taken steps to ensure that the riparian zone around these waterways remain healthy by implementing the Watercourse Greenbelt. And that, in addition to maintaining the health of the rivers, does act to protect properties along that Watercourse Greenbelt from flooding. And these have been established. The Watercourse Greenbelt is a buffer from 30 meters from the Sackville, Shubenacadie, 9 Mile River, Meander, Beaverbank, and Herbert rivers, and then also Ryan's Creek, Black Brook, and Barney's Brook. And these are areas which are not covered by floodplain mapping. And then currently in the Watercourse Greenbelt zone, the development is restricted to passive recreational opportunities, conservation-related uses, and development that is specifically related to the provision of municipal services. And then there are also regulations with regards to setbacks from watercourses, and depending on the width of the watercourse, impacts the setback that's required. And there's also a setback from lake shores. And staff have undertook a review of Town of Kentville and the municipality of Cumberland and their flood requirements, and that's been included in the staff report. So an assessment has been completed on what the land uses are adjacent to the 5 more major rivers in the future planned area: the Walton River, Tennecape, East Knoll, 5 Mile, and Kennecook rivers. So you can see there the different land uses breakdown within the 30-meter buffer of those rivers. So during the plan update open houses and part of the survey, staff received feedback regarding the protection of environmentally sensitive lands, and some of the comments from residents have been provided in the staff report. But the plan update survey did identify that almost 70% of residents who responded to the survey from the future planned area selected that environmental preservation should have strong regulations. Approximately 25% responded that environmental preservation should have average regulations, and there was around 5% that suggested limited regulations. So just to note that that was just the people that responded to the survey, and doesn't include all of the people within the future planned area. And then responses from the open house and the plan update suggest there is a strong interest from the community for environmental preservation. So planning staff recommend that the Watercourse Greenbelt zone, which I've just mentioned, be also implemented along the Walton, Tennecape, East Knoll, 5 Mile, and Kennecook rivers. And this Watercourse Greenbelt will enable protection of properties from the risk of flooding, protect the quality of water, control sedimentation and erosion, and will also help to maintain the rural character. And there is a copy of the regulations in this presentation, but just a note there that it allows for passive recreation, conservation related, and development specifically related to the provision of municipal services. There is a stretch of the Shubenacadie River located from the start of the river at the Miners Basin through to South Maitland, and that's been included in the Fundy Shore Vulnerability Study area. So there may be some other regulations that might be appropriate for those that stretch of the river, but we'll know more once the vulnerability study is completed and a report is presented to Planning Advisory Committee on that report. And here are the regulations for the Watercourse Greenbelt, and this has been included in the staff report as well. And there's a map here that just shows you the rivers that are proposed for these Watercourse Greenbelts to be applied, and that it would also include the Shubenacadie River. I'm not going to name them all because I've already mentioned them, but they're all there on the map. For smaller waterways, and then to ensure protection of the smaller ones, staff are recommending that regulations from the general provision of the land use bylaw be adopted into the future planned area. So this would just mirror what's in the current planned area of the municipality. And the recommendation is to authorize staff to prepare amendments to the policies and regulations based on the direction in this staff report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Warden Ralston.
Thank you. Through you to staff, just a couple of things. You're not going to survey too many groups of people that aren't going to generically say, yes, we support, we support protecting the environment and so on. I'm also pretty sure that a lot of the people who support protecting the environment probably do in many cases, but I don't think they would understand that that would include regulating things like this as part of it. That, would be a more in-depth discussion. Having said that, 30 meters doesn't seem particularly excessive to me, but my concern is that in many of these areas in the unplanned area, there are already structures. There are already things built, and anything we do, I don't want to see us hamstring ourselves, such as we were in the high-risk floodplain for the former doctor's office. The building was there. It used to be a house. It's not being used as an office anymore. And it was extremely difficult to be able to allow an alternative use for that property, which I don't want to be in that position. So my first question is, if we do this, can we have some type of regulation? I know what's there now is grandfathered, but can we have something in there that permits snappers in Kennecook from doing some renovations? I don't know how far from the river those apartments are. Like, I don't want to negatively impact what's already there and their ability to continue on with their plans. That's my first question. And
Rachel?
Yes, I'll just go through to the Watercourse Greenbelt. So we do have, if you can see here, 10.41, it does allow for permanent structures. It does allow for accessory buildings, basically, that are accessory to the main use on the property. But we could certainly look at how we might be able to address existing uses and how, I guess I understand what Councillor Ralston is trying to get across there, not hamstringing those existing property owners, but we can look at how to address that in the regulations.
That would certainly be appreciated. Now, these, and I see you are allowed with accessory structures. So would that allow things such as boathouses, docks, that sort of thing?
I mean, it's
no good to have a boathouse 100 feet from the water.
I guess it would come down to whether a boathouse is considered an accessory structure to a dwelling. John, do you have would you consider that to be an accessory structure?
It would be. And they're specifically permitted, for example, around the lakes and the lakeshore residential zones. So I don't think it would be any different in this zone. If you had a residential use area, you could have a boathouse.
Okay.
And docks wouldn't come under this regulation anyway. That's they don't need a building permit.
But it's a structure, and you're saying you can't have a permanent structure. The devil is in the details.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we should go this route, I will be expecting to see something there that addresses that before I vote in favor of it at the end of the day. Those are my comments there. I don't know, how would it be addressed? We're into different discussion now, but knowing of an existing situation, what about a situation where it's a non-permanent structure? What about a situation when some folks haul a half a dozen camper trailers right along the riverbank or the edge of a lake and they set them up and they're not permanent structures?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, that use would be considered, I think, a campground. It sounds to me like it wouldn't be permitted because it's the use that wouldn't be permitted in that case. It's not accessory to a residential use. It sounds to me like a campground use.
Again, I say the devil was in the details. So those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Counselor Rhino.
It's almost uncanny how the warden and I are thinking today. Right along the same issue. You've got snappers there. I don't want to see anything put in that would stop them from maybe outside patios or whatever. We also have on the other side of the river, you know, we have just an impressive private museum, I'll call it, there by Mr. Anthony there, that I encourage anybody to meet. You know, the effects that it's going to have on those. We talked about somebody along the river there that has a cabin or a cottage. You know, are we thinking about this? You know, for lack of better things, we're going to do the same thing to the Kennecott area that we did in Shubenacadie, which I was not in favor of. And has any consideration been given to how that will affect property assessments and insurance values and things like that when we start on with regulations such as we're heading down the road for?
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lockwood.
Okay, there we go. You say 30 meters on both sides of the river or the Shubenacadie?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the Shubenacadie River, only one side is in East Hants. The other side would be whatever the municipality was on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Of course, yes, that's correct. But can I get a overview of what 30 meters actually is on the east hand side of the river of Shubenacadie, in the village of Shubenacadie? Can I get an over like in District 4?
So through Mr. Chair, so that the floodplain mapping goes up to approximately where the 102 crosses over. And then from there upwards, it's the Watercourse Greenbelt. I'll just leave the presentation for a second and bring up my mapping program so I can show.
Yeah. The reason why I'm saying because is the doctor's office seems way farther than 30 meters.
Through Mr. Chair, that's actually within the floodplain. This is a different thing. The floodplain was identified based on modeling and surveys of the river and a number of different things that the consultant did to identify where those flood lines should be located. What we're talking about here is the Watercourse Greenbelt, where these are areas where we don't know where, we don't have information on where flooding might occur. So we're asking for or recommending a 30-meter buffer and say that in some areas, the flooding area might be further than the 30 meters, it might be less, but we just don't know. So we've got this 30-meter buffer, but I can bring up the map to show other areas where this 30-meter buffer has been applied. So you can kind of get a feel for what that looks like.
I didn't hear the extension of the floodplain, so I just going on what I heard and what I read here in this report, so.
So can you see the map on the screen there?
Yes.
So you can see here, this little kind of light green color is the buffer, the Watercourse Greenbelt. And this is the 102, and this is the very edge of the floodplain mapping just here. So then from that point onwards, along the Shubenacadie River, we have this Watercourse Greenbelt.
And so through you, Mr. Chair, the proposal would be that would extend up further. So Rachel, if you could scroll up, you can see where it ends, where zoning ends. There is no buffer beyond that point.
Yes.
Would that be on the other side of 102 towards District 5? Or I don't think that's Shubenacadie.
Shubenacadie is just south of here. I'm just scrolling up the map here to show you where the edge of the Watercourse Greenbelt runs.
So you can see here it extends along this portion and then it continues up the Shubenacadie River. If I zoom out too much, you won't be able to see.
Yeah, you. No.
Essentially, it goes up to where the edge of the unplanned area is.
You're way out of Shubenacadie, the village of Shubenacadie
Yes.
now. You're along
Right.
the road, you're way up Ryan's Creek and further.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this was just to show you that what that watercourse greenbelt looks like. In Shubenacadie itself,
Yes.
we're looking at this the floodplain that's been implemented. So the watercourse greenbelt doesn't apply to the village of Shubenacadie. It's south of the 102 is floodplain zoning. I'm just going to come back to the Shubenacadie village. So Councillor Knockwood, this is the area that has the floodplain zoning on it, south of the 102.
Now, can you go up a little further? See where you at now? Now you're by the residential school now. Okay, there it is.
So we have, yeah. So the floodplain mapping it runs all the way down to Enfield.
Okay, the lighter blue is the 30 meters, right?
No, this lighter blue, is this the blue we're talking about? Is
Yes.
actually the Shubenacadie River.
Oh, that's the Shubenacadie River.
Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, again, that 30-meter buffer doesn't exist here because we have detailed mapping. And as you can see, in most cases, it's much further than 30 meters. It's in some cases, it'd be more than 100 meters.
So the floodplain extends past Snides Lake. Am I correct there?
I'm just going to scroll up again.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chair. That darker greenish blue color is all high-risk floodplain.
High-risk floodplain.
Yeah.
Wow. That goes a long ways on the river. I think that's too far myself. Now I'm looking at it now. First time I get to see this map. Right up to Mitchell's Roads. Okay. Okay, thank you. I got it now.
Thank you. That's all, Councillor Knockwood.
Yes.
Councillor
Thank you.
Musa. You're muted, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John or Rachel, aren't those regulation already in with the Department of Environment? Like the 30 meters?
Through Mr. Chair, no, these are our regulations in our land use bylaw.
Yeah, but I know in Mount Uniacke with the lakes and stuff, like the Department of Environment have a 30-meter setback. Aren't those in all Nova Scotia or just in certain areas? Or
I'm not familiar with the Nova Scotia environment regulations, but in Mount Uniacke there are setbacks, 30-meter setbacks from lake shores and the Sackville River as well. But I'm not familiar with any environment regulations.
I think if those Department of Environment have those regulations, so we're not adding anything.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think so. Those are municipal zoning regulations. There are regulations about forestry operations near water courses provincially, and they have regulations about shoreline alteration and so on, but I don't think they just have a standard 30-meter setback the way these regulations would require.
No, I don't know, but I was told by Kelly one day that you cannot, the Department of Environment, you have to have acceptance to be able to build closer to the lake from 30 meters, not from us.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that may be related to a septic system within that 30 meter. There may be a buffer for that.
Structure, no, the structure. That's what she told me. So I think we're not adding anything of that all across the board, Nova Scotia.
We can double check, but I don't think that's a provincial regulation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else for discussion? What are your wishes? Is anybody prepared to move the recommended motion? Warden Rolston.
Sort of.
Pardon?
Sort of. I move that Planning Advisory recommend that council authorize staff to prepare land use policies and regulations for floodlands based on the direction in staff's report dated January 5th, 2022, also taking into account the discussion around pre-existing structures and structures that might not be considered permanent.
Have a mover, do we have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Garden Cole. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Councillor Rhino.
Just to make sure that these policies will be created and brought back for review.
Yes, they'll come back. Will they not, Rachel?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say through you, Mr. Chair, that they will, any policies and regulations that are drafted will come back for review.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, be looking for the question. Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. All in favor? The motion is passed unanimously. On to the next item. Next one, plan update, Mount Uniac Growth Management Area Road Paving Background Paper. John.
Hey, thank you again, Mr. Chair. So this paper relates to a motion passed by Council C-2261, which directed staff to prepare a report on the current growth management area and should it be revised with regards to paving of roads and new development. And although the motion doesn't mention Mount Uniac, it was clear that that was the discussion at the time. We were talking about the Mount Uniac GMA and whether requiring paved roads as we do now may be discouraging development there. And given that Mount Uniac is the only GMA that is not serviced with municipal sewer and water, it has much lower density. Minimum area, for example, you basically get 1/7 the number of lots if you're subdividing the same area, because your lot standard goes from 500 square meters for an R1 lot in a serviced area to 3720 square meters where on-site services have to be used. And your lot frontage goes from 16 to 30 meters. So you have to build almost twice as much road and you get 1/7 the number of lots. So that was kind of the economic argument, I guess, that it's obviously it can affect the profitability of development with unserviced. And this is just the to highlight what we're talking about in terms of the Mount Uniac GMA. So it goes from the HRM boundary, follows Highway 101 up to Westlake, and then follows that up all the way to I think that's Norman Lake, and then back down towards the HRM boundary and across Mackenzie Drive. And we've had this discussion a number of times over the years about what standard we should require development to be built to. The current regulations in Mount Uniac have been in place since April 2006, and they do require paved roads in all growth management areas and growth reserve areas, while not requiring paving outside of those areas. And the rationale for this is that these areas, whether they're serviced or not, these are the areas council is directing growth to. And with that greater development and density comes greater traffic, resulting complaints about dust and potholes on unpaved roads. In addition, I think there's a counter argument to that. And I've heard all the arguments over the years from developers about the ability to make money doing development with paved roads in Mount Uniac. You have to also consider that there are all kinds of additional costs that you face when you're developing in serviced areas that you don't face in unserviced areas. So, you know, in a serviced area, you have to install all your own sewer, water, buried storm drains, curbs, street trees, sidewalks, All that's at a developer's cost. In addition, the lock rating bylaw only applies to our serviced areas, and that's typically $1,000 to $2,000 extra per dwelling to comply with the lock rating bylaw, to actually have a professional prepare it. And you also are required to provide 10% of land for open space as opposed to 5% in the unserviced areas. So there are quite a number of differences. And of course, also infrastructure charges only apply to serviced areas, which, you know, at a cost of about $6,000 to an R1 lot. Again, in an unserviced area, obviously, whether it's a developer or the homeowner, the installation of services on site would more than offset that, of course. And although, again, we've heard complaints about the road paving requirements in the past, in the last few years, I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, we've noticed an increased interest in development in Mount Uniacke, and the road paving requirement really doesn't seem to be as much of an issue, I would say. So there are 3 current examples I can give you. This is called the Orchards. It's a 23 lot subdivision off the Etter Road, which has received tentative approval under a subdivision bylaw. And all those, you'll have 2 new municipal streets, which will be paved. We already talked about Portrait Jack at the beginning of the meeting, and that's a 50 lot subdivision. And again, these will all be future municipal streets that would be paved. And then there's Headwater Village, phase 3, which is a 24 lot subdivision off the Old Mines Road. And that's currently in our subdivision approval stage as well. And that would also be a new municipal street paved. So to conclude, if the cost of paving new roads in the Mount Uniacke GMA were a barrier to development in the past, it appears to no longer be the case, as evidence in the strong developer interest staff are seeing in the above noted applications and a number of other inquiries that we're receiving. So given this trend and the superior service advantages that paved roads offer to residents, staff are recommending that the existing regulations be maintained. And that is the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, John, for that report. It's very informative. And in Mount Uniacke, there has been a lot of these developments come forward. And in order for that to happen, though, it's basically meant that if you have to sell your land to a bigger developer, somebody with deeper pockets to be able to develop it, because the landowner, if it was a family-owned land plot, they just don't have the money and the infrastructure up front to do that development. That, I guess, is the way it's going to have to go forward. And that's what has happened with all the developments, as we see, especially if you look at the Orchards. The Orchards started off as a family development, and they had to sell out to a larger developer because they couldn't afford to put the road in. That's what happened there. So that's just the way business, I guess, is going to have to go. One of the questions I do have, though, is we look at the lot sizing that's required in the on-serviced area. With the advances of the last 20 years in the size of septic fields and vertical septic fields, and not needing to have always your C3 in a massive area, is there anything that we can relook at what the actual size and road frontage is required for these lots in the on-service area? Because I don't think that the lot sizing in some of these areas is it's quite large. Some of these other subdivisions, if you look at some of the older subdivisions in Mount Uniacke up on Rockwell Drive off of Uniacke Mines Road, I guarantee they don't have 30 meters of road frontage between their houses, and there's about 200 houses like that going back. And then as the new phases have come on, they've all now abided by the new regulations, and the lot sizes are a lot bigger. I just don't know if maybe there's a happy medium somewhere in between, where the paving is a good idea. It definitely has long-term effects. The one thing I'm a little concerned that I didn't know, and that's on me, that lot grading wasn't required in the on-service area, because you're going to have water moves across pavement, and it has to go somewhere. And elevations from lot to lot can make a huge difference, whether you impact somebody, your neighbor right next to you. You all of a sudden build up, and next thing you know, you're flooding out your neighbor. We've had instances of that, and it's come forward at council from developments historically that have happened within the corridor. and the people are dealing with it day to day of, you know, a poor drainage plan. I think that's something else that we might need to look at in the future to ensure that those lessons that we learn from older developments in the corridor where paved roads and everything have happened, and the movement of wastewater, even if there's no storm system, need to be looked at. But that's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To add to Councillor Perry's comments, yeah, you're right, Councillor, like only big developer can afford now to put subdivision in there. And John, I agree with you on some areas, like where if you can show the subdivision approved, like not the South Uniac one, the one on behind Rockwell Drive. Yeah, so that's part of a 250 acre development, and they're doing it by phase, but the total approved is like 140 houses or 150 houses there. So I agree 100% that they should be paved. But our point is if you purchase 5 or 10 acres and you want to build a road, and you pay for and your cost per acre when you buy 10 acres is like more than $10,000 easy, compared to when you buy 100 acre for $200,000, which is $2,000 per acre. So that's all your profit gone there. So you're prohibiting the small cul-de-sac, whatever you want to call them, like dead end street, like probably 5-6 homes. If you have a property of 10 acres and you want to split it between 3 or 4 kids, so if you want to pave it and build the homes on it, you better give it to one and buy the other's property on the other way, because you won't be saving any money, just dividing your property into small pieces. And on the other part, when you said the developers in the corridor area, out of an acre or 2 acre, or out of an acre, they can get 7 lots. So if you pay 6,000 on each lot, you're still making money, like, because 6 lot will sell for 300 compared to 1 lot selling for 60,000. So you cannot compare those two together. I don't know. To me, I cannot compare because there's big difference. Plus, those lot owners are paying $60,000 or $70,000 now. They still have to put $20,000 for septic and $10,000 for a well and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's one week we talk about affordable homes, and if the price of lot gonna go up to $100,000 before you start construction, that's not gonna be affordable to even put a trailer on. I heard the trailer on Mount Uniac now on half an acre lake lot is selling for $320,000. So if we want to think affordable, we have to make smaller size lots. I know I have property in Sackville just down the road, probably on the other line, on the other side of the line, between Halifax County. I could subdivide it in 20,000 acres, 20,000 square feet lots with sewer, with the septic and well. So I don't have any services. So on one side we have 1 acre on, and even if we put down our requirement to 20,000, it's still gonna pass the per test for the environment. So if you need more, they'll force you to put more, like, but the minimum with us should be set lower, and then the Department of Environment could take it from there and suggest what size lot can you put in. I think that's how it works. I don't know if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure about HRM, but I mean, we can look at their lot standard for unserviced development, and I think what we've done over the years, we've just, through you, Mr. Chair, we've just tracked the provincial subdivision regulations. And actually, this development's kind of an interesting one, because you can see the changes on the first part of Rockwell Drive. The lots are much smaller, and then when they got to phase 2, they went up in size. What are those? Probably 5 times the size of the original lots. But we can look at that standard to see. I mean, obviously, there's more risk the smaller you get your lots in an unserviced area where you have to rely on your own well and septic system. We talked earlier about the hydrogeological study. Obviously, the higher the density in an area like this, the more opportunity there is for things like well interference and for failing septic systems. But we can certainly look at that if that's the will of council.
but we are approving permit, we're grabbing permit on a 7,000 square foot lot on a lake now. So the septic is well advanced. I don't know about the water, probably the water could be a problem, but for a septic, I think when we approve 7,000 square foot and we give permit for a septic on a lake in the middle of nowhere, we should be able to give 20,000 square feet. So that's my point. I don't know about septic council, what they want to see in the growth management area. Plus, one more thing, I really have a problem with the area itself, because on one side you have one street, like let's say Mackenzie Lane. If you can put Mackenzie Lane on one side, you could make a subdivision with dirt road. On the other side, you have to pave it. And if you look what happened on the pavement side, I don't think any of us want to see some development like that. I know it exactly, but I don't know if other council are familiar with it. It's like bunch of flag lots and bunch of nightmare between neighbors gonna be. You don't know which is your road frontage, which is your neighbor property. So I don't think that's what we want in here. We want something nice. We want lots that are squared. And you're pushing the other way now. I think we're pushing the other way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to comment? What is your wishes on the recommended motion? Councilor Rhino. You're muted, Councilor.
I guess if there's no motion, it remains as it is right now, when that's with that greater GMA and Mount Uniac require paved roads. So I don't, unless there's going to change, I don't see the requirement for a motion.
I guess, Mr. Chair, we put a motion or a draft motion there because there was a motion directing us to do something. So this is kind of the conclusion of it. But you're right, or Councillor Rhino is correct that if there's no motion coming forward as this, the regulations just stay the way they are.
Okay.
So actually,
whoops, go ahead, Councillor Rhino.
So if anybody wanted to move the motion to be received and placed on file, then there's no motion required.
Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I was just kind of leaning for the councillors from the Mount Uniac area to weigh in on how they felt about it, and I'm kind of going to follow their lead. I guess what you're saying is that if the lots were able to be made a little smaller, then developers could pave the road, and it would help to increase their profits while still paving the road. Is that what I'm getting? Selling more lots, still paving, and making more of a profit, making it more enticing for them.
Sorry.
Yeah, I believe that's what Councillor Musa was getting at. I'll let him elaborate there on it. Go ahead, Councillor Musa.
It's not for profit, but it's for the small lots that the family owned lots that want to spread between if you have 2 acres and you have 3 kids, you cannot pave a road and subdivide it and do something with it, right? But I think I agree 100% that big subdivision like 50 lots and more or 25 lots or more should be paved. But I would like to see staff bringing up something like for small stretch, like 400 feet lot, 400 feet road or something, to be able to keep like family together and stuff. So that's what I like to see.
Okay, thanks.
I don't have a big problem with the big subdivision. I don't have problem with if the developer making profit or no. But I'm leaning toward. I agree 100% with what John said about the big subdivision. But my point is if we can do something about like now, if you have 5 acre lots and you want to put like 200, you want to pave 200 to get to the next 2, then pave another 100. So you have to pave 300 feet to get two extra lot of your lots. it's not doable, and it's not. The only people that gonna go on this road are the people who live on it. So it's not a major problem. So that's what I like to see, some small caveat like here and there to be able to put like small stretches like lady slipper lane. It's one perfect example. Like if you want to pave this, I don't think he would be able to sell any lots. So if we could do something about that, would be perfect. So I don't know about Councilor Perry. Most of them in Councilor Perry's district too. So I think he should weigh on too.
Councilor Perry, do you wish to weigh in?
I'll weigh in. Yeah, it's a difficult one because there's a lot of pre-existing gravel roads, private roads that people are very happy to live on. They are very happy that, you know, their roads are clear and well graveled and well salted, and they're not going in the ditch like people are on provincial roads right now. So it's because of the priority, like it's a pay for service. They pay extra for that, and they know that that's a service they get when they live there. As far as, you know, there's been a couple large parcels of land that are going to be developed. There's big developers coming in, putting in big subdivisions. And yes, I totally agree with Councillor Musa, and even the direction that the municipality is like, we should have, you know, good paved roads, and you know, adds to a quality of life. There are a number, as we go back to the other paving petitions, there are a number of roads that had multiple paving petitions, and the people don't want it paved because the potholes keep people driving slow. They don't want people racing up and down their road. So it's really a difficult thing. It's a fine balancing act. I think right now, leaving things as status quo is okay. But there has to be, as Councillor Musa said, something has to be available for that 5 to 10 acres that a family wants to divide up and have a family parcel. Like years and years ago, you would see that. I mean, even in the rural area, you know, you divide off 4 or 5 acres and give it to one of your kids so they can live close to home. I don't know if we have to have some provision that small developments like that can happen under development agreements with certain conditions or whatever, but as we grow and as we get bigger, we have to also remember, like, we're still Hants County, and we are a rural municipality, as Nova Scotia is considered a rural province. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Everybody talks about senior housing and developing income assisted housing. Well, on a big lot size that's required currently now in the GMA, there will be no senior housing being developed in Mount Uniacke, because it is just too it's too costly to put the road in, to build the size of lots. If you know, you can't right now, you can't build a tiny home village or a little retirement community like that. It would have to require a special development agreement. So it's just it's a difficult situation. But right now, until people come forward with questions on things, I think remaining the status quo for now is okay. But we have to have an avenue that people can come forward and ask, and possibly put a development agreement or a proposal in front of us that council can make a decision on. And I don't know how we do that or what type of legislation we have to enact to make it happen, or bylaw or policy, but that's something that is going to affect a lot of people, even as we go into the growth area outside of Lance. There's a lot of large family plots out there that you know, would be restricted under this. So that's all I have to say about that. I see the warden has something to say.
Thank you. If I may, Councillor Perry, I believe you are the vice chair of planning.
Okay.
I'm going to turn the chair over to you. I have to go for the booster. Warden Rolston is the only one on deck. Enjoy the rest of your meeting, folks, and I'll see you next Wednesday night.
Good luck. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. I just wonder, and John can maybe tell me if it would be appropriate or not, but as staff continue to try and flesh out and create regulations in the current unplanned area, if it's kind of an aside, they could bear in mind these issues that are being described in particularly the Mount Uniacke area, and whether or not some of the provisions we might come up with in the current unplanned area. And I understand there's growth management, and maybe it's as simple as changing that boundary, I don't know. But perhaps as these regulations are developed, we just kind of keep an open mind as to whether something that was developed there might also work in Mount Uniacke.
Through you, Mr. Chair or Vice Chair. Yeah, in fact, I made some notes here, and I am curious now about the lot size and frontage requirements as an example. So maybe it's not that we get rid of the paving requirement, but we improve the economics of development by looking at those things. So, I'm going to go away and do a little bit of research on those two issues. Other than that, I mean, we can always look at policies to allow us to do a development agreement. So if you want to do some unique kind of development that, you don't feel like you can capture everything in a zone requirement, then that's what development agreements are for. So we could also come up with a policy to allow consideration of unique developments that way.
Okay. Next on deck is Councillor Tingley.
If I had my head up or hand up, it was just to scratch my head. I've got no questions or comments.
Oh, sorry. That's it. Anybody else? All right. I guess we'll just file this away. Thank you for the report, and we'll move on to Councillor Garden-Cole.
Just before you leave PAC, through you, Mr. Chair, excuse me. Before we leave PAC, I would just like to, in lieu of what we had discussed regarding the property at 428 Highway 2, I would like to further have that investigated. So I would like to make a motion that staff investigate the development at 428 Highway 2 in Enfield and bring back photos for council next Wednesday night to determine if it's immediate safety consideration that council should be acting on.
I'll allow it. Go ahead. There's a motion seconded by Councillor Knockwood. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Seeing no discussion, questions been called. We'll go to the vote. All those in favor? And the votes pass unanimously.
Thank you.
Warden Rolston.
Yes, the CAO had to leave for an appointment and leaving us in the capable hands of Mr. Clarkson. And she did shoot me a message before she went. So I'd just like to put it out to council that we could, depending on the timing, I know folks may have timed things according to the agenda, we could do PRC on council night, or move particularly the grant reports, and the F400 report could very easily be done at a budget meeting. So just wanted to throw that out there to council and see perhaps what your wishes were.
So I'll put it out to the chair of PAC, Councillor Rhino.
Is there anything that has to be dealt with immediately today that we could not put off, is the role warden to see?
I'll take that one through you, Mr. Vice Chair. No, the items could be deferred at a later date. The playground strategy could even go to next committee if council so chooses or committee chooses. And the 3 items regarding community partnerships, general government grants, and bylaw 400 are all budget related items. So they could go to a future budget meeting.
So there was nothing, if I may.
No.
Yes, go ahead.
There's nothing there. So, would be my suggestion, if there's nothing pressing between now and we take this down, defer this to further down the road.
All right. Everybody's heard from the chair of Parks and Rec. All those in agreement, raise your hand. All right, looks like we're moving Parks, Recreation, Culture items to future meetings dealing with budget and next Wednesday. So I guess that brings us to the end of our day. So I will be looking for a motion to adjourn executive committee. Moved by Councillor Knockwood, seconded by Councillor Rhino. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
just stopping the recording and the live stream.